Friday morning, just after 9 o'clock on KCMO. Happy to, as we always do each and every Friday, welcome in a Feature Friday guest. Get a little more long-form conversation with somebody in and around Kansas City. And this morning, we're happy to welcome on and say good morning to someone who you may be familiar with. I think a portion of the audience will know Johnnie Calloway. He is now the Grassroots Engagement Director for Americans for Prosperity Missouri, and he joins us on KCMO. Johnnie, good morning, my man. How are you?
I'm doing good, sir. How about yourself?
Well, you and I first met as a caller. Gosh, it must have been, 6 years ago? 5 years ago?
Yeah, about 5 years.
5 years ago.
Yeah.
All right. So now you're a social media influencer. I know that makes you blush, but I can use that word. You've racked up, millions of views on different videos on YouTube. I know you were canceled during COVID as well, but you've bounced back in a big way. You're working for Americans for Prosperity here in Missouri. And you're somebody from inner city Kansas City who nobody would ever expect to be a conservative. Tell me about what changed your life and what moved you in that direction.
Oh, man. First off, thanks for the opportunity. I say we all are born with conservative values. If we look back to the way we were raised with our grandmothers and grandfathers, no elbows on the table. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Take your shoes off when you walk in the house. Got to stand around and hold hands and pray before you eat on holidays. So those things are always rooted in me. But I think culture, it has a big hold on all young individuals, and a vessel can only express outwardly what it consumes inwardly. So once you hit me with 3, 4, 5, 10 years of rap music, I'm going to be a little degenerate, But luckily, I was able to get back to my roots and make my family proud.
So the culture, you think, drags you naturally to the left?
Yes, 100%.
And then for you, was there a moment or was it just a series of things in your life? Because you've got, how many kids now?
I have 10 together, 2 deceased children, 8 living children.
My gosh.
Yeah.
I'm sorry about it. I didn't know that.
Oh, no, that's my superpower. Everybody always say, what would they do if they lost a child? I have 2 buried a row apart from each other, right at 12 Gate Cemetery. So I love life. I value every single day.
So you've got 8 children. And was there moments or moment in particular that made you kind of change your worldview as you saw it?
I should have woke up a long time ago.
How old are you?
I'm 35.
Okay, you're 30. So, yeah.
So when you live in a traumatic environment, you either run from it or you suppress it. And for so long, I just suppressed all the hurt, all the pain, all the trauma. My mother and father had really bad domestic violence. But what was unique is they both loved me. Neither one of them ever hit me, never yelled at me, never talked bad to me. Always told me I can do anything I want in this world. Spoke so much life to me, it makes no sense. But they were average people living with the environment and broken. And broken.
Right here in Kansas City.
Yes, sir. My mother overdosed on opioids in 2015. My daddy is still alive. He might be listening. What's up, Daddy? But at 16 years old, the neighborhood drug dealer was shot on my front porch. At 17, I graduated high school with no lights, no water, no gas in the home. But my parents always told me you didn't have to be a dope boy to have money. So I vividly remember going home the last day of high school and sitting on the couch crying to my mother because I didn't know what I was going to do. A lot of my friends were dying, and they say God makes no mistakes. So I started working at AT&T, and from AT&T, it transitioned to Sprint, from Sprint to Google. And in the back of my mind, I still was, like I said, culture obsessed a little bit. So I had some children. My first son passed at 18 years old from trisomy 18. But then I had a daughter, and my daughter really made me mature and grow up. And I remember it was her first day of kindergarten, and I went to the school that she was attending. It was a public school, and you had parents smoking and cussing. And that's when it hits you, the environment you in. I don't want my child around this every single day. So I applied for a job at Notre Dame de Sion as an IT guy. And I vividly remember looking at the post on LinkedIn. Not LinkedIn, I'm sorry, Indeed, and scrolling past it, saying, man, they're not going to hire me. I'm black. Mm-hmm. And then something smacked me in the back of my head and told me to go back and apply for the job. And I went through 3 rounds of interviews. And after I got that position, they told me I was hired out of 50 candidates. So that's that confidence that you got to believe in you. And if you think you can't, then you can't. If you think you can, then you can. But if you don't put the effort in, you never know. So becoming a father is really what really springboarded my growth, my maturity, but also having deceased children. But when my mother was alive, she was my babysitter, so I still could drop my kids off to my mom every weekend and go, party and stuff and hang with my homeboys. But when she overdosed, there was nobody in front of the mirror. It was just me in the mirror. And I think something that all men know is that we don't put in 100% effort. We know we could get up earlier. We know we could eat a little better. We know we could be a little nicer. We know we could slow down and calm. And they say we all have 2 lives, and the second one begins when you realize you only have one. And burying those children should have matured me, but burying my mother, I knew I had to make her proud. And I couldn't carry myself as the way I know she didn't raise me to be.
So that was 10 years ago now. So you're 25 at the time.
Yeah.
I'm sure that was a major inflection point for you. Fast forward a couple of years, and I guess that's around when you called our show for the first time.
Yeah.
And you were listening to the station, and it was an accident, right? That you found this show on this radio station.
Yeah, so we always listen to 103.3, but somehow my wife had, by mistake, turned to 103.7.
Now, let's be clear, just for people, because now we're on 95.7 FM. We got this 100,000-watt FM stick. For people that don't know, for new listeners, we were on this little FM along with 710 AM, 103.7, which was just a little 250-watt nothing FM signal. But it was right around, KPRS, big R&B, hip-hop, what would we call it? Hip-hop station here in Kansas City?
100%.
So we were right down at the time from those guys on 103.3, and we were on 103.7. So basically, what happened? You were on the wrong radio station?
Yeah. And I was leaving Javi Arena from playing basketball. We played early mornings. And I was listening. I'm like, oh, this is conservative. And I'm at the pump on 31st and Brooklyn at the gas station. I sit there and listen for about 5-10 minutes, and I realize it's local. And my first emotion was to call in, and my second thought was don't call in. And call in, you go back and forth inside your head.
Yeah.
When I go inside the store, I pay for my gas, and I decide to call in, and here we are years later.
So, I remember that. We were in the old building, and listen, the reality is there are not a lot of people that look like you or sound like you that call us. Now, there's more of them coming into the fold because the world is changing. We've grown this audience tremendously. But you were like a unicorn, right? I mean, you were a 30-year-old young black male in the inner city calling us. And was it a moment for you when you're like, I actually agree with the stuff this guy's saying right now?
Well, I kind of have.
Or you already were?
I kind of already was. So, I consumed the Larry Elder, the Thomas Sowell, the Jesse Lee Peterson. But outside of that, just growing up with a father, I watched that man get up every day and go to work. There was no excuses. No matter what, he would be drunk, he could get out of jail, and he would go make money. And I just always knew I had that same masculine energy inside of me. And when you watch the breakdown of the communities, when you're watching half your friends get murdered, when you're going to school writing RIP on lockers, when you're watching young women become, mothers at a young age, it's ignorance. But the only way you can have ignorance is lack of knowledge. Well, if somebody else controls the flow of knowledge, in a sense, they can keep you ignorant. And someone will always profit off your ignorance, whether you like it or not. So I had to become better so I could do better. And it's the example, like, I don't think I'm as much as an anomaly as the media or the algorithms can make it seem, right? Like, Tupac influenced Jay-Z, Jay-Z influenced Lil Wayne influenced Young Thug influenced King Von, YNW Melly, so on. So once you get to see somebody with a different perspective, it opens the door for it to happen. So I think I'm just the first one who done broke through, but it's about to be 100 of them behind me.
So you really think that this dam is going to break and there's going to be a flood of younger, especially black men, moving to the right?
1,000,000%.
But you think with that has to come a change in the culture too, right? Because
and I think it will, because for the individuals who really grew up around violence, you don't want to raise your sons that way. For the individuals who you still got to go see your father in jail, you don't want to watch anybody else become that way. It's only propagated by the people who don't have to see it every single day. And I think there's enough individuals who have grew up in poverty, in violence like I have, but have made it out and able to become successful to use their voice to say this ain't the right way.
How, listen, for those of us that didn't grow up in that kind of an environment, you obviously had a father who had some struggles, it sounds like, but also worked every day and loved you tremendously. But how hard is it to break the cycle if dad's not around? And what can change that? Because what we hear a lot is, hey, someone grew up without a dad, gets someone pregnant, they have no example to be there and be a role model for that kid and raise that child.
Yeah, I think it comes from telling young men the truth. You're responsible for your actions. We live in a victimhood society, but every time you lay down with a woman, there's a chance she could have a baby. So that's known. Now, I think the problem with a lot of young men, and I went through this in myself, is we live in a mama's boy society. where no one holds you accountable, and it's because you black, and it's because of police, and it's because of racism, and it's because of this, because of that, and eventually you got to get rid of the excuses.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my grandfather always said the only color that really matters is green. And before you ever make
green?
Yeah.
Like money?
Yeah. Because you put a white millionaire and a black millionaire in a room together, I bet the last thing they talk about is skin color.
Yeah.
But it's for the people in poverty, it's the biggest thing. And if we being honest, my brain don't know what color my skin is. Your brain is plastic.
Mm-hmm.
So I can manipulate you and mold you to think whatever I want to.
Yeah.
So if you understand anything the mind can conceive and believe it can achieve, then what story do I want to tell you? Do I want to tell you that you've been a slave and you've been oppressed, if you've never accomplished anything? Or do I want to tell you about Jack Johnson, who was a heavyweight champion in 1907? Do I want to tell you about Madam C.J. Walker, who was a black millionaire?
Mm-hmm.
Do I want to tell you about the Civil Rights Bill in 1876 by U.S. Grant? See, I can tell you a story that makes you feel like you've less than, you never can become anything, or I can tell you a story that makes you so proud of everything that your ancestors have been through that you want to do nothing but make them smile. It's all about perspective.
It is.
Perspective is reality.
Johnnie Calloway is in studio for our Feature Friday segment. He's the Grassroots Engagement Director now for Americans for Prosperity here in Missouri. He's a lifelong Kansas Citian, and we'll keep the conversation going. I want to dive into more of the cultural topics coming up with him next on KCMO Talk Radio. Our Feature Friday guest is Johnnie Calloway. Just find him on YouTube. Just Google YouTube Johnnie Calloway, and that's Johnnnie Calloway, and you will find his YouTube page. He's got tens of thousands of subscribers on there, and he's a Kansas Citian. He's been a longtime listener of this show. We connected as just a caller years ago, and now he's also working with Americans for Prosperity in Missouri as a grassroots engagement director. So let's talk about that, Johnnie. Just the last election, we saw really a lot of urban areas move to the right. Now, there's still a long ways to go, but what do you attribute that to?
Foundation principles. Like, hip-hop culture has always been counterculture, if you think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, NWA had F the Police.
Yep.
So when you look at how Hollywood and every major artist is 100% aligned with the mainstream, well, that right there would tell you something doesn't correlate. You know, Kodak Black, about 6 months ago, dropped a song with Donald Trump ad-libs that no one heard of. That should be a number one song going crazy in the hood right now, but when you can suppress algorithms, then you can control what people know. But Trump has always been extremely popular. I think by year 3, he'll be mainstream popular. It's going to be hard to keep it hidden from the masses.
Now, do you think that'll be more amongst black men than it is black women? Because we've seen a shift amongst black men to the right, but women haven't really moved.
I think they'll move if they can find a man they want.
Oh, so you're saying basically if they're married, it will make a difference?
If they marry or they see a man that could potentially be a good husband, then they're going to pitch their views to match his.
So take me through that. I mean, in let's use urban Kansas City, for example. Are the married couples, even if they don't vote Republican, are they more conservative in nature? And is that a potential way for the party in particular to gain more of a foothold in these communities?
I think marriage in itself is a conservative institution.
Yeah.
Christ over man, man over woman, woman over children. See, everything that God does is perfect. And it has an order and it has a process. And if you go with that order, then you reap the benefits of it. And if you go against that order, which we've been seeing going on in the inner city since the 60s, look what you get. As you sow, so you reap. So
why is it then that there's just this institution of still voting for a party that is not really representative of those values?
The boogeyman. You know, you're scared. You better not be a Republican. You better not talk to them conservatives. You know, they tell you don't talk to conservatives, but who in the inner city is conservative? Everything has been run by Cleaver and Lucas. I was born in 89. Kansas City's been run by Democrats since 91. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. Mm-hmm. And a different blackface doesn't give you a different result. It's still a blackface, give you democratic policies.
Mm-hmm. So what about you? I mean, you told me a story once about how, your daughter plays basketball, right? Or, you've got 8 kids, so I'm sure.
They all hoop and play soccer a little bit.
But one story stood out where you walked in and she plays with mostly white kids and you had a MAGA hat on. Mm-hmm. And the white parents all did double takes and totally disagree with your politics. Yeah. Right? Yeah, so what's that like?
When you live in your phone, which most people do, so you live in a false reality, an algorithm, it shocks you when you see someone with a different perspective, a different reality. And the way our brain works is you have to hear something or see something 6 times before you try to accept it as possible. So you could imagine the overload of a young black man walking around in a Make America Great again. But I think people need to be comfortable with different perspectives, with different ideas. For too long, we've been not allowed to have open dialogue. And I want to know who my enemy is. I don't want you to pretend you like me so you can stab me in the back when the minute I turn around. And that's the system that we've been operating in. And men have been emasculated to where they can't say what they really feel. And I'm really big on the First Amendment. And I think if more men spoke their truth, then the world becomes a better place. But male suicide is through the roof. And it's because too many men are letting themselves be suppressed. And the more we open up, the more we speak, the more we save society.
How about when you walk around with a MAGA hat in, like, the grocery store in the urban core? How does that go?
Oh, nobody cares.
No one cares?
I get a bunch of thumbs up. I get a nice hat. I wore it on a plane, and I sat in the very front row on Delta, and the flight attendant was like, nice hat, asked to take a picture with me. I think this concept of what you can't do, it's fear, false evidence appearing real. And I look at myself as like a Shawn Michaels. You know, I'm the rebel, heartbreak kid.
So you've never gotten a hard time walking into a urban Kansas City grocery store with a MAGA hat on? No one's ever given you a hard time?
Not once.
See, but that's not what social media would tell you.
I know. And the thing is, I put my videos on social media, but they don't go as far. But I make videos walking through the airport with a MAGA hat on and all that. But if you got to see it, then it becomes trendy. And that's how world work. I mean, if we're being honest, the reason most people join a Black Lives Matter or any of these groups is because it takes a lot of confidence to stand on your own and say all of y'all are wrong. But Romans 8:31, if God is for us, who could be against us? So when you filled with the Spirit, then you willing to stand 10 toes down and say, I ain't with all that. And I think if we can get more people to be confident in themselves, then society naturally shifts you to be conservative. But society takes advantage of broken people. It wants you sad with anxiety, depression, not believing in yourself, not loving yourself, and feel like the world is over. And the future is bright. We got the greatest technology we've ever had. You know, if there's ever a reason to be excited about the future, it's now.
Yeah, I got about a minute here, Johnny, but you were supposed to go to the White House this week. The weather prevented that from happening, but you're going to the White House next week with a bunch of fellow black conservative influencers. And what are you going to say to President Trump if you meet him?
I hope I can get a picture with him. I haven't even thought what I would say to him if I get to meet him. That's something I need to ponder over for the next few days.
You got a few days to figure it out, man. Hey, you know what you should tell him? Tell him he's got to join this radio show in Kansas City Monday in the morning, and we'd love to have him. Can you tell him that for me?
For Pete, I got you, dog.
Hey, man, will you have photos up on your Instagram page?
Hey, I'm taking as many pictures as possible, many as possible, just because of the opportunity to get to go to the White House to meet the president. I mean, I grew up in the city mission homeless shelter, and I'm going to the White House. If that ain't the American dream, I don't know what is.
And you're the first one in your family who's ever going to step foot in that White House.
Yes, and not one member of my family is upset about my politics. My mama, rest in peace, mama, not you. My daddy, my aunties, my brother, everyone is okay with me supporting Trump. And if you let politics divide your family, you got bigger issues.
I totally agree. Hey, Johnny, it is great to have you here. Johnnie Calloway, now the Grassroots Engagement Director, Americans for Prosperity, Missouri. Find his YouTube channel. Just search for YouTube, Johnnie Calloway, and that's Johnnnie, and it'll be the first one that pops up right now. I guess Trump's helping you out on the platforming part there.
Yeah, the algorithm been killing me over the last 3-4 years, man.
And he's also on Instagram. Follow him there. Search Johnnie Calloway or misunderstood_genius with the E as a 3. Great to have you in, my man. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for the opportunity, man.
You bet.